Your wedding was boring. I am sorry, but compared to what humans used to do, cutting cake and throwing rice is absolutely nothing. We are talking about grooms shooting their brides with arrows, newlyweds banned from peeing for 3 days, wives being sold at actual markets, and guests standing around the bed watching the couple consummate their marriage. These are 33 real wedding traditions that make modern ceremonies look like a business meeting. Some will make you laugh, some will make you extremely uncomfortable, and at least one will make you question everything you thought you knew about romance. 1. Let us start with what might be the most physically demanding wedding tradition ever created. The Tidong people of Borneo have a rule that sounds like a punishment from a reality TV show gone wrong. Newlyweds are forbidden from using the bathroom for 3 full days and 3 full nights after their wedding ceremony. No peeing, no pooping, nothing. The couple is watched constantly by family members to make sure they do not cheat. They are given minimal food and water, basically just enough to survive without creating too much, well, output. The belief behind this torture? If the couple breaks the rule, their marriage will be cursed with terrible luck, infidelity, or the death of their children. So yeah, the pressure is real. Imagine spending your honeymoon not thinking about romance, but desperately calculating how long the human bladder can actually hold out. Medical professionals today would call this dangerous. The Tidong call it love. 2. Medieval Europe had a lot of questionable ideas, but the bedding ceremony might be the most awkward one. After the wedding feast, guests would physically escort the newlyweds to their bedroom. And by escort, I mean they would literally undress them, tuck them into bed, and then stand around watching to make sure the marriage was properly consummated. Sometimes priests were present to bless the bed. Sometimes the entire wedding party would hang around making jokes and offering encouragement. For royal weddings, witnesses were actually required to confirm that the deed was done, because producing an heir was political business. Privacy was simply not a concept that existed for married couples on their wedding night. The tradition eventually died out, thankfully, but for centuries, your first night as a married couple came with a live audience. Nothing says romance quite like your uncle giving you a thumbs up from the corner of the room. 3. In India, astrology is serious business when it comes to marriage. If a woman is born under a certain alignment of Mars, she is considered to have Mangal Dosha, a curse that supposedly brings bad luck, illness, or even death to her future husband. The solution? She must first marry a tree. Specifically, a banana tree or a peepal tree, also known as a sacred fig. An entire wedding ceremony is performed, complete with rituals and prayers, binding the woman to this plant in holy matrimony. Then, to break the curse and free her for human marriage, the tree is cut down or destroyed. The cosmic bad luck transfers to the tree, which conveniently cannot complain about dying for someone else's love life. Celebrities have done this. Ordinary families have done this. Somewhere right now, a tree is being dressed up as a groom, completely unaware of its upcoming sacrifice for the greater good of someone's horoscope. 4. The Uyghur people of China have a wedding tradition that sounds like a deleted scene from an action movie. Before the ceremony, the groom must shoot his bride with 3 arrows. Now, before you panic, the arrows have their tips removed so nobody actually dies. The groom draws his bow, aims at his beloved, and fires 3 times. After this romantic assault, he collects the arrows and breaks them in half, along with the bow itself. This symbolizes that his love for her will last forever and that he will never harm her again. Which is a lovely sentiment. But you have to wonder about the logic here. The best way to prove you will never hurt someone is to first pretend to hurt them 3 times. It is like promising to be a good driver by first doing donuts in a parking lot. But hey, the tradition has lasted for centuries, so clearly it works for them. 5. French weddings gave us champagne toasts and romantic destinations. They also gave us la soupe, a tradition so disgusting it makes every other wedding ritual look civilized. After the newlyweds retreated to their bedroom, wedding guests would collect all the leftover food and alcohol from the reception. Scraps of meat, half-eaten bread, dregs of wine, random sauces, whatever was lying around. They would mix this horrifying combination together and serve it to the couple in a chamber pot. Yes, a chamber pot. The vessel people used as a toilet before indoor plumbing existed. The couple was expected to drink this concoction before they could consummate their marriage, supposedly for good luck and fertility. Modern versions use chocolate and champagne in a new bowl, which is slightly less revolting. But for centuries, French newlyweds started their married life by chugging garbage soup from a fake toilet, while their friends watched and laughed. 6. In Mauritania, a deeply troubling tradition has persisted for generations. Young girls are sent to fattening farms where they are force-fed up to 16,000 calories per day. The goal is to make them as large as possible before marriage, because in this culture, obesity and stretch marks are considered signs of beauty, wealth, and fertility. Girls as young as 5 are subjected to this practice, forced to consume huge quantities of camel milk, couscous, and fat-rich foods. If they refuse or vomit, they face punishment. The practice, called le bleu, is slowly declining due to education and health awareness campaigns, but it still exists in rural areas. While different cultures have different beauty standards, this tradition causes serious health problems, including diabetes, heart disease, and psychological trauma. It is a stark reminder that wedding traditions are not always charming quirks. Sometimes they represent genuine harm wrapped in the language of tradition and love. 7. Spartan warriors were famous for being tough, disciplined, and raised in all-male military barracks from age 7. This created a small problem when it came to wedding nights. These men had literally no experience being around women. The solution? Make the bride look like a man. Spartan brides would shave their heads completely bald and dress in male clothing and sandals. The idea was to ease the psychological transition for the groom, who had spent his entire life surrounded only by other men. The bride would wait alone in a dark room while her husband sneaked away from his barracks, consummated the marriage quickly, and then sneaked back before anyone noticed he was gone. The couple would continue this secret arrangement for years, sometimes only meeting in darkness. Some Spartan men reportedly did not see their wives in daylight until they had already had children together. Romance was clearly not a Spartan priority. 8. In South Korea, the groom's suffering begins immediately after the ceremony. His friends and family tie his ankles together with rope, remove his shoes and socks, and proceed to beat the soles of his feet with dried corvina fish or a wooden stick. This tradition, called falaka, is supposedly a test of the groom's strength and character before his wedding night. Between strikes, his tormentors quiz him with questions and riddles. Answer wrong? More beating. The whole thing is meant to be playful, and everyone usually ends up laughing. But let us be honest, getting your feet smacked with a dried fish still hurts. The groom has to endure the pain while proving he has a sense of humor about the whole situation. It is basically a hazing ritual disguised as a wedding tradition. But hey, at least the fish provides dinner afterwards. 9. Between the 17th and 19th centuries, divorce in England was essentially impossible for poor people. Only the wealthy could afford the complex legal process. So common folk invented their own solution, wife selling. A husband who wanted to end his marriage would take his wife to a public market, put a rope or halter around her neck like livestock, and auction her off to the highest bidder. This sounds absolutely horrifying, and it often was, but historians have found that many of these sales were actually prearranged. The wife and her buyer, usually her actual lover, had already agreed on the purchase beforehand. The public auction was just a way to make the separation seem legitimate to the community. It was still degrading and legally meaningless, but for desperate couples with no other options, it provided a way out. The last recorded wife sale happened in England in 1913. That is disturbingly recent. 10. Swedish weddings come with a tradition that would probably cause immediate arguments in most other countries. When the groom leaves the reception hall to use the bathroom, every male guest has permission to kiss the bride. And when the bride leaves for the bathroom, every woman at the wedding can kiss the groom. This tradition, called wedding kissing, is supposedly all in good fun. The kisses are meant to be quick pecks, not passionate embraces, and everyone treats it as a lighthearted game. The practical effect is that neither the bride nor groom wants to leave the room for too long, knowing what is happening in their absence. Some couples find it hilarious, Others develop superhuman bladder control for the duration of their reception. Either way, it certainly keeps the wedding interesting and gives everyone a funny story to tell. 11. Among the Maasai people of Kenya, a father saying goodbye to his daughter on her wedding day has a unique way of expressing his love. He spits on her. Specifically, he spits on her head and her chest before she leaves her childhood home for the last time. In Maasai culture, this is not disrespectful at all. Spitting is actually a form of blessing. The father deliberately avoids praising his daughter too much with words because verbal compliments are believed to attract jealousy and bad spirits. So instead, he gives his blessing in the form of saliva. The bride receives this spit with gratitude, knowing her father loves her enough to protect her from evil forces. It is a completely different framework from Western weddings, where fathers typically give tearful speeches about how wonderful their daughters are. Same love, very different delivery method. 12. Prima nocta, also called droit du seigneur, is the legendary right of a feudal lord to sleep with any peasant bride on her wedding night before her husband could. This concept has appeared in countless movies, books, and shows, most famously in Braveheart. But here is the thing. Historians have found virtually no evidence that this practice actually existed as an official legal right anywhere in medieval Europe. The earliest references to it were written by people who were criticizing it as barbaric, but they were describing foreign or ancient cultures, not their own. It appears to have been mostly a myth, possibly invented to make previous generations seem more brutal, or to justify political reforms. Some lords certainly abused their power in various ways, but an actual codified right to deflower brides? Probably fiction. It is one of history's most persistent legends about the past that probably never really happened. 13. Scotland has a pre-wedding tradition called the blackening that looks like something from a horror movie. In the days before the wedding, friends and family kidnap the bride, the groom, or both, and cover them head to toe in the most disgusting substances available. We are talking treacle, soot, spoiled milk, rotten eggs, fish guts, mud, flour, feathers, and sometimes actual garbage. Once properly coated, the victim is paraded through town, often tied to a truck or cart, while everyone honks horns, bangs pots, and makes as much noise as possible. The theory behind this charming tradition? If you can handle being publicly humiliated and covered in filth, you can handle anything marriage throws at you. It is basically an extreme stress test for your relationship. The tradition remains popular in rural Scotland today, and some couples actually look forward to it. Others probably reconsider their choice of friends. 14. The Dor people of Inner Mongolia in China take wedding planning very seriously. Before a couple can set their wedding date, they must perform a ritual together that would make most modern couples extremely uncomfortable. They have to kill a chicken together and then carefully examine its liver. If the liver looks healthy and normal, the wedding can proceed as planned. If the liver looks abnormal, discolored, or otherwise bad, the wedding must be postponed. The couple then has to kill another chicken and check again, and again, and again, until they finally get a liver that passes inspection. Some couples reportedly go through multiple chickens before getting the cosmic green light to get married. It is essentially letting poultry organs determine your wedding date. On the bright side, the wedding guests probably have plenty of chicken to eat at the reception, assuming the couple ever gets there. 15. The Celts had a brilliantly practical approach to marriage called hand fasting. Instead of committing to forever on day one, couples entered into a trial marriage lasting exactly 1 year and 1 day. Their hands were literally tied together with a cord during the ceremony, which is where we get the phrase tying the knot. During this trial period, the couple would live together as husband and wife, sharing a home, responsibilities, and a bed. When the year ended, they had a choice. They could either formalize the marriage permanently or simply walk away with no hard feelings and no complicated divorce proceedings. Any children born during the trial period were considered legitimate, regardless of the outcome. It was essentially a subscription service for marriage, with a free trial and easy cancellation. Honestly, given modern divorce rates, maybe the Celts were onto something. 16. In Fiji, When a man wants to marry a woman, he must first present her father with a tabua, a polished tooth from a sperm whale. This is not optional. Without the whale tooth, there is no wedding. The tabua is one of the most sacred objects in Fijian culture, used for important ceremonies, apologies, and negotiations. Historically, obtaining one meant either hunting a whale yourself, which is incredibly dangerous, or acquiring one through trade, which was incredibly expensive. The whale tooth represents the groom's commitment, status, and ability to provide for his future family. Even today, authentic tabua are treasured heirlooms passed down through generations. Some families have whale teeth that are centuries old. Modern Fijian weddings still require this tradition, though the teeth are now obtained through family inheritance rather than actual whale hunting. It is possibly the most high-stakes father-in-law impression gift in human history. 17. The tradition of bridesmaids catching the bouquet has a surprisingly aggressive origin. In medieval Europe, wedding guests believed that touching the bride brought good luck. Some believed tearing off a piece of her dress was even luckier. This led to situations where brides were literally mobbed by guests trying to rip their clothing apart. Dresses were destroyed. Brides were sometimes injured. The whole thing became chaotic and dangerous. To protect themselves, brides started throwing objects as distractions, including their garters, bouquets, and anything else that might satisfy the crowd's hunger for lucky souvenirs. While the mob chased the flying objects, the bride could escape to safety. The bouquet toss we know today is the sanitized version of what was essentially a defensive maneuver against wedding guests who had become way too enthusiastic about their superstitions. Next time you catch a bouquet, remember you are participating in a survival strategy. 18. In the Republic of Congo, there is a wedding rule that would be impossible for most people to follow. The bride and groom are forbidden from smiling during the entire wedding ceremony and reception. Not during the vows, not during the photos, not during the dancing or the toasts or the cake cutting. The entire event must be conducted with completely serious faces. The reason? Marriage is considered an extremely serious commitment, and smiling would suggest the couple is not taking their vows seriously enough. Any bride or groom caught cracking a smile risks being seen as immature or frivolous by their families and community. Imagine trying to maintain a straight face while everyone you love celebrates around you, while you wear a beautiful dress or suit, while you marry the person you have chosen to spend your life with. This tradition requires an Olympic-level ability to suppress joy. 19. Viking weddings required the groom to pull off what was essentially a supernatural heist. Before he could marry, a Viking man was expected to break into an ancestral grave, which might belong to his own family or a defeated enemy, and retrieve a sword from among the buried treasures. This was not just about proving bravery, though crawling into a dark burial mound filled with bones definitely required courage. The sword represented the transfer of power and protection across generations. The groom would then present this ancient weapon to his bride during the wedding ceremony. She would keep it safe, eventually passing it on to their future sons. The whole thing symbolized an unbroken chain of warrior legacy. Of course, not every grave contained a sword, and not every groom was eager to disturb the dead. But a Viking wedding without a grave-robbed weapon was apparently not a proper wedding at all. 20. German weddings feature a tradition called Poultry that makes cleanup crews weep. On the evening before the wedding, guests gather outside the couple's home and bring porcelain, ceramic, or pottery dishes. Then, they smash everything. Plates, cups, tiles, toilets, literally anything breakable except glass gets hurled to the ground and shattered into thousands of pieces. The resulting mess covers the entire area in front of the house. And here is the important part. The bride and groom must clean it all up together. No help allowed. The noise of breaking dishes is supposed to scare away evil spirits, and the cleanup symbolizes how the couple will work together through life's messes. Some Poultry celebrations get so intense that entire van loads of dishes are destroyed. Neighbors know to expect the racket. The tradition remains extremely popular in Germany today, though the couple's backs probably regret it the next morning. 21. Victorian-era weddings featured accessories that would horrify most modern brides. hair jewelry was incredibly popular, and we are not talking about decorative hairpins. We are talking about jewelry made from actual human hair. Brides would receive wreaths, bracelets, brooches, and necklaces woven from the hair of their family members as wedding gifts. The hair was carefully collected, cleaned, and intricately braided into beautiful patterns. These pieces were treasured keepsakes, meant to keep loved ones close even after death. Hair art was actually a respected craft, with professionals who specialized in creating elaborate designs. Queen Victoria herself wore hair jewelry regularly after Prince Albert died. While this seems deeply creepy today, for Victorians it was a touching way to carry family connections wherever you went. The line between sentimental and disturbing is apparently very thin and changes dramatically depending on the century. 22. English wedding traditions include a superstition that chimney sweeps are incredibly good luck. If a bride sees a chimney sweep on her wedding day and receives a kiss from him, her marriage will supposedly be blessed with happiness and prosperity. This belief became so widespread that chimney sweeps would actually hire themselves out to attend weddings. They would show up in full work clothes, covered in soot, specifically to kiss the bride and accept payment for their good luck services. The origin of this superstition is unclear. Some say King George II's carriage horses once ran wild, and a chimney sweep saved him, earning the profession royal favor. Others say the soot and association with fire represents warmth in the home. Whatever the reason, professional chimney sweeps in England still get hired for weddings today, walking around events in their black coats and top hats, distributing lucky kisses to brides. 23. The Tujia people of China have a wedding tradition that requires the bride to become a professional crier. Starting 1 month before her wedding, the bride must cry for 1 hour every day. This is not optional, and it is not about actually being sad. It is a structured ritual called zuotang, where the crying follows specific patterns and songs. After 10 days, the bride's mother joins her for daily crying sessions. 10 days later, the grandmother joins too. By the wedding day, the entire female family is weeping together in what becomes almost a musical performance. The crying songs actually contain lyrics expressing gratitude to parents and sadness about leaving home. Brides who cry beautifully are admired for their expressiveness and filial piety. Brides who cannot produce tears are sometimes considered badly raised. It takes the stereotype of emotional wedding families and turns it into a mandatory month-long requirement. 24. Ancient Roman brides underwent a hairstyling ritual that sounds like something from a gladiator movie. On her wedding day, the bride's hair would be parted into 6 sections using a special iron spear called a hasta calibaris. But not just any spear would do. The weapon had to have been used to kill someone, preferably a gladiator or an enemy of Rome. The spear point was believed to drive away evil spirits that might curse the new marriage. Some historians think this tradition connected the bride to Mars, the god of war, whose protection was desirable for the new household. Others suggest it symbolized the bride's transition from maiden to matron, a kind of ritual death of her former self. Regardless of the reasoning, Roman brides sat very still while someone jabbed a blood-stained weapon around their heads. Wedding preparations were apparently much more intense before the invention of hair salons. 25. Everyone knows about honeymoons, but few know where the term actually comes from. In ancient European cultures, newlyweds were given enough mead, a honey-based alcoholic drink, to last 1 full lunar month after their wedding. They were expected to drink this honey wine every day, sometimes multiple times a day. The reason was not just celebration. Mead was believed to have aphrodisiac properties and to promote fertility. The month of honey wine drinking would supposedly increase the chances of conceiving a child quickly. The moon reference comes from both the lunar cycle and the belief that the sweetness of new love, like the moon, would eventually wane. So the honeymoon was originally less about traveling to romantic destinations and more about staying home, drinking constantly, and trying to make babies. The tradition evolved significantly, but the name stuck around for over 1,000 years. 26. German weddings include a practical test of teamwork called Baumstammsägen, which translates to sawing the log. Immediately after the wedding ceremony, often while still in their formal attire, the bride and groom are presented with a thick wooden log and a two-person crosscut saw. They must work together to saw completely through the log while their guests watch and cheer. The challenge requires coordination, communication, and patience. If one person pushes too hard or pulls at the wrong time, the saw gets stuck. The couple has to find their rhythm together, which symbolizes how they will need to cooperate through challenges in their marriage. Some couples breeze through it. Others struggle visibly, sawing back and forth while the log barely moves. The tradition provides wedding guests with either an inspiring demonstration of partnership or hilarious entertainment at the couple's expense. 27. In Ireland, a groom trying to reach his wedding ceremony might encounter straw boys, groups of young men dressed in elaborate straw costumes who would block roads, surround churches, and refuse to let the wedding proceed until they received payment. These were not robbers or criminals, but a traditional part of Irish wedding celebrations. The straw boys would demand food, drink, money, or the promise of an invitation to the wedding feast. Their costumes made them anonymous, which allowed them to act more boldly than they normally would. Once satisfied, they would let the groom pass and often join the celebration, dancing with guests at the reception. The tradition dates back centuries and was particularly common in rural areas. Some couples loved the dramatic addition to their wedding day. Others probably wished they had eloped instead of dealing with a hostage negotiation before their vows. 28. In Kyrgyzstan, a tradition called ala kachu, meaning grab and run, has ranged from playful ritual to serious crime. In its traditional form, a man who wanted to marry a woman would arrange with his friends to abduct her, bring her to his family's home, and pressure her into accepting marriage. His female relatives would try to convince the crying, sometimes physically resisting woman to stay. In some cases, this was essentially prearranged between families who had already agreed to the match. But in many cases, women were genuinely kidnapped and coerced into marriages they never wanted. While the practice is now illegal in Kyrgyzstan and prosecutions have increased, it still occurs, particularly in rural areas. This is one tradition that demonstrates how cultural practices can mask genuine harm, and why some traditions deserve to disappear rather than be preserved. 29. Tudor era. English weddings ended with guests throwing shoes at the departing couple. When the bride and groom climbed into their carriage to leave the reception, everyone would grab old shoes and hurl them at the vehicle, or directly at the newlyweds themselves. A direct hit was considered especially lucky. The tradition may have originated from even older customs where the father would give the groom one of the bride's shoes to symbolize the transfer of authority over her. Over time, this evolved into throwing shoes for good fortune. The custom eventually softened into the practice of tying shoes or cans to the back of the wedding car, which remains popular today. So next time you see shoes dragging behind a car with a "Just Married" sign, remember that those are the descendants of projectiles once aimed at people's heads. 30. Ancient weddings featured an interesting form of protection against evil spirits and would-be kidnappers: decoy brides. The bridesmaids would dress in outfits identical to the brides, making it impossible for any malevolent force to identify which woman was actually getting married. If demons wanted to curse the bride, they would have to guess which one she was. If rival suitors wanted to steal her away, they faced the same problem. This is actually one of the oldest explanations for why bridesmaids exist at all. They were human shields, dressed up as targets to draw danger away from the real bride. Over time, the matching outfits became less identical, bridesmaid dresses became their own fashion category, and the spiritual protection angle faded away. But the tradition of having women stand beside the bride on her wedding day traces back to this ancient security measure. 31. Several cultures around the world share a tradition where the newlywed couple eats their first meal together in complete silence and total isolation. No guests, no family, no conversation. Just the two of them, eating quietly in a room alone. The specific reasons vary by culture. Some believe silence allows the couple to reflect on the seriousness of their commitment. Others think speaking during this sacred meal could invite bad luck or evil spirits. Some traditions hold that the first word spoken should be carefully chosen, so the couple waits until the meal ends to speak at all. The isolation emphasizes that marriage creates a new, separate family unit. Whatever the reasoning, it is a stark contrast to the typical wedding reception filled with noise, speeches, and constant social interaction. Sometimes the most profound moments happen without any words at all. 32. In France, a tradition called charivari served as public punishment for couples who violated social norms. If a marriage seemed inappropriate, like an old man marrying a young woman, a widow remarrying too quickly, or a wife being known to dominate her husband, the community would gather outside their home at night. They would bang pots, pans, and drums, shout insults, sing mocking songs, and create an unbearable racket that could last for hours or even multiple nights. The noise was meant to shame the couple and express community disapproval. Sometimes the charivari would only stop if the couple paid money or threw a party for the tormentors. The tradition existed throughout Europe under various names and lasted well into the 19th century. It was essentially social media cancel culture, but with drums and kitchen equipment instead of hashtags. 33. Today, white wedding dresses are so standard that wearing any other color seems rebellious. But for most of human history, white was actually a strange choice for brides. In many cultures, white was associated with mourning and death. Brides typically wore their best dress, regardless of color, with red and blue being especially popular. Red symbolized fertility and passion in many Asian cultures. Blue represented purity in Europe before white took over. Everything changed in 1840 when Queen Victoria married Prince Albert in a white gown. As one of the most famous women in the world, her fashion choice sparked immediate imitation among those who could afford it. White dresses became associated with wealth, since white fabric showed dirt easily and was impractical for re-wearing. The tradition spread globally through colonialism and media influence. So the white dress that seems like an eternal tradition is actually less than 200 years old. So after 33 traditions involving grave robbery, public humiliation, and chicken liver fortune-telling, here is what I need to know. And I am calling out everyone watching right now. Tell me in the comments, what is the strangest, weirdest, or most embarrassing thing that happened at your wedding or a wedding you attended? I know you have a story. Everyone does. Spill it. If this made you thankful your wedding did not involve a chamber pot full of food scraps, hit like and subscribe.